Thanks for the movie, Tom. We appreciate you keeping cinemas alive. Back home from Mission Impossible 7 Dead Reckoning Part 1. It's quite the title. And my wife and I, in preparation for this, we've been watching all the other Mission Impossible movies. And I've seen, actually, I had seen them all, but I guess what happened was I saw the first one, really loved it. I loved the TV show. I used to watch reruns of it when I was a kid. I did have some issues with that movie, I guess, upon first watching it, but I got over those. I could talk about those maybe in a ranking video later. And then 2, I was pretty into back in the day when it came out. And then 3, I wasn't a fan of. Again, we're talking like when these movies first came out. And I eventually got kind of gave up on the franchise, but then I years later watched and then stopped watching them. And then I think Fallout, I was like, you know what, let me catch up on the ones I haven't seen and then watch Fallout. And I feel like I've come to really love this franchise, especially after rewatching all of them, most recently with my wife. And I've just been having a really good time, and I feel like this movie just added to it. I'm a fan of it. It had amazing action sequences, I mean, even some scenes that weren't high in action felt as if they were action sequences. There's this sequence that happens within an airport sort of early on. You could call it one of the first action sequences in the movie. But it's not really that. But it's extremely intense. You are worrying the whole time. You are afraid. It builds up some anxiety in you, and I just thought it was done really well. And then there's like this moment of relief where you're like, ah, and you just completely feel your body tension shift. And I feel like this movie is really good at that. These movies are funny, some of them more funny than others. This one has some good humor in it, and it has an action sequence that infuses quite a bit of humor in it, probably more than we've ever seen in a action sequence, I would say. This one involves a car, but I didn't think it went too far. Sometimes that sort of thing can bother me, but it didn't here, and I think it's just the humor, the way it's done throughout the movie, throughout the franchise, especially with the addition of Simon Pegg, it all worked for me. So that, I don't know, I just had fun during all of that sequence. There's a train sequence in this movie, which obviously makes us think of the first film, the original one. I thought that was cool. I don't necessarily know if they were trying to call back to it, but that's just sort of what naturally happens. I think when you're watching this movie, it makes you think of the first movie. There was that very famous bike jump that happens, and that was really cool as well. I think maybe I would have liked to have seen some other angles, but the way it was edited together, I didn't miss the angles that I was expecting to miss, because I had seen, this jump happen with like some making of little featurettes that they've put out, and I was like, I don't know if that's the best angle for this jump, but everything that happens in that scene, it ended up working great, even though I didn't get the angle I wanted. I feel like what they did worked very well. It didn't need what was going on in my head when I was thinking this is how they should do it. So yeah, we have characters we've never met before, brand new characters. We have a lot of returning characters as well. I love that Ving Rhames is in every single one of these. I guess it's just he and Tom, right? I think are the only two that are in every single movie. Speaking of, Kittredge from the first movie is brought back. This movie actually, early on, before the credits even roll, very much felt like the original show, and I really liked that. The self-destructing tape felt like a good callback. I mean, I know they've done that a few times, but like the photographs, all of that was very television show. That green smoke, oh, I'm giving stuff away. That green smoke that we see in this movie really felt like the show. I don't know, I thought so much of it felt like it had that original quality to it, but also had everything that exists now within the franchise. It felt like a good blend, because I feel like De Palma's film is really the only one that really feels, the first movie really feels like the show in a heavy amount. Um, and then it sort of deviates away from that and has for quite some time. But this one felt like it was coming back, especially with bringing back, gosh, what's his name? Kittredge, right? Isn't that his name? The director, the IMF director. He is in the first movie, and then we hadn't seen him at all in all the other films, and then he's back in this one, and it was so cool. Makes you wonder what happened to Lawrence Fishburne, what happened to Alec Baldwin, what happened to Anthony Hopkins, all those people. Where did they all go? What happened? I think I'm forgetting another one. Isn't there one more? Oh, not Dr. Manhattan. Was he one of them too? Oh wait, no, he worked for Lawrence Fishburne. Okay. Anyway, and actually, I don't think Anthony Hopkins in 2 was the director. I think he was like a team leader or something. But anyway, what am I trying to say? I'm just like going off on these tangents here. That's kind of my way, though. I like that this one felt like a nice tip of the hat to the original series. That was really nice, and it did so with the bringing back Kittredge. Kittredge, is that right? And also the way they filmed him felt like De Palma's movie too, which was great, because there were some like close-ups on his face and Tom's face, Ethan's face, during this movie, which there's an exchange in the original film that felt very similar. Or was in De Palma's film it was a little more extreme, but it was a clear in this movie tip of the hat, and I thought that was nice. Because it's just shot like with some extreme angles, like Dutch angles, low angles, and close-ups and things like that, and that was really cool to see come back. But yeah, overall, I thought this movie was good. I love the new characters. Palm, is it Clementif? Am I saying that right? I know her as Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy. I like our villain here. I know him from Ozark. There's also another villain. I guess I've already done some spoilers, but here's a bigger one. Basically AI, the entity AI, which I think is pretty cool. It's dealing with stuff I think we're all worrying about right now. I mean, the writers and actors are on strike right now, and they one of the concerns is AI, and this movie like tackles that. That's like sort of what this movie is about, and all the previews for the before this movie tackled AI as well, which was pretty interesting. So it's definitely in our minds. It's in the zeitgeist. It's the topic of conversation and movies right now. So yeah, all that was felt very, very fitting for this movie. Who else do we get that's new? I don't know. I mean, is it just Palm? I think maybe it is. But we get a lot of people returning as well. They're high stakes. And this is a part 1 of 2, which a lot of times I don't think that works. I'm not that big on like Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3, the way that the movie just abruptly stops. Like the Twilight franchise did that. What else? I mean, I guess the Lord of the Rings movies do, but those all seem to come to great conclusions for each film, while still not a complete story. And I think this movie does the same thing. We have a complete story within this one, but there's even more that needs to be done, and that's what part 2 is going to be like. So I thought it still felt like a very contained movie that could be watched on its own, because there's a clear ending to the immediate story, but there's a larger story that needs to be told, which is what the next movie is going to do. Anyway, I thought it was a really good movie. Have you seen it? What did you think? I don't know. I got to sit down and think about how I would rank them all. I'd like to make a ranking video since they're all fresh in my mind. I think that would be a lot of fun. But I feel like this movie, or this franchise, is becoming one of my favorites. And I know I'm late in the game for that. But again, the first movie, I've grown to like, but when I first saw it in the theater, I had some major disappointments with something that they did with a character. And 3. I didn't like 3, so I kind of gave up on the franchise until Fallout. And then I went back. And then watching them this most recent time, I'm like, man, I think I just love these movies so much. So, yeah, what do you think of it? How would you rank it? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments below. And perhaps I'll see you tomorrow for more Pure Hangout.